One night, we are shown a man on a motorcycle, and he will be the main character of this Donghua series, named Jin Ting. He is an illegal street boxer by profession. In the middle of his journey, he suddenly receives a call from an unknown number, where the person had a little mocked Jin Ting's profession as an illegal boxer. Finally, Jin Ting realized that the person was Chow Ruidu, who was now right behind him, driving a McLaren supercar. Judging by their common surname, it's likely that the two are related. And the reason why Ruidu contacted Jin Ting was to let him know that he didn't want to lend money to Jin Ting, who had asked him for it, even though he couldn't lend it. But Ruidu offered a way for Jin Ting to get money from him by betting on a race. If Jin Ting won, he would get money. But if he lost, he would give his life to Ruidu. The race finally began, and both parties picked up speed. While Ruidu was in pole position, a truck suddenly appeared from the other direction with lights that severely impaired his vision, forcing him to suddenly brake and maneuver to avoid hitting the truck. Unfortunately, Ruidu's supercar got in the way of Jin Ting, who was eventually hit and thrown off the cliff. And in those moments, you can see the blue light starting to shine from the necklace that Jin Ting is wearing, which is the beginning of the main story of this movie. When he regained consciousness, Jin Ting was now in an unknown room with a silver bracelet on his wrist and a modern sword in front of him. In a state of confusion, Jin Ting took the sword, and it turned out that his actions triggered a countdown from the beginning of a game that did not explain what the mission of the game was. And then he went out into a branching passage to find out more information about what exactly happened in this place and where he was. After exploring several corridors, Jin Ting found traces of blood everywhere, as well as human body parts lying on the surface, indicating that the mysterious game he was participating in was no ordinary game. Back in the hallway, Jin Ting could hear the sound of someone's footsteps coming closer. He could finally see that the footsteps came from a middle-aged man who was in an exhausted position. As Jin Ting was about to greet him, the man was suddenly attacked by a creature that resembled a giant rat and a half-android. Let's call this creature a vicious rat monster.
Ni?
In this tense situation, a man suddenly appeared from behind and tapped Jin Ting on the shoulder. Reacting quickly, Jin Ting immediately cornered the man against the wall and asked him where this place was. Unfortunately, like Jin Ting, the fat man's name was Chateji. He didn't know where they were either. The fat man's last memory was that he was stabbed by a robber, and when he opened his eyes, he was suddenly here. After that, Jin Ting and the fat man continued their exploration. During the trip, Fatso looked very scared when he saw several corpses lying around in the corridor. What was even more frightening was that Jin Ting and the fat man saw with their own eyes and minds a mountain of human skulls piled up, and there were some fresh corpses among them. The Fatso's music box, which had accidentally fallen over, also added to the horror of the scene they were witnessing. At the same time, a vicious rat emerged from the pile of skulls, which would definitely be a threat to them. So, without hesitation, the two of them ran away before the creature got them. The fat man still had time to pick up his music box. A little info, guys. The music box is a probe that Fat got before the game started. Just like Jin Ting, who got a sword. In the midst of their escape from the vicious rats, the two came to the end of the hallway with a gate in sight. Here, the two asked the person in the room to open the gate. However, they received no response at all. After taking a closer look, Jin Ting felt that the face of the vicious rat in front of him was very ugly and angry. And since they were already cornered, the MCs had no choice but to fight back. However, before they could show their actions, they were both pulled into the room. Inside the room were actually dozens of people. Among them, there was one man who stood out the most, and his name was Qian Chao, the man with the glasses who opened the gate to save Jin Ting and the fat man. After thanking Qian Chao and seeing that there were a lot of people in the room, Jin Ting immediately invited them all to go straight to the vicious rat. From the corner of the room, a man with an annoying face replied that Jin Ting was crazy, because surely no one would take the risk of facing the wild rat. The MC also said, just use that annoying face as bait. At the same time, Qian Chao also explained that the reason everyone was able to live there was because they managed to stay away from the wild rats. Therefore, no one would dare to come out of this room unless Jin Ting was truly confident that he could finish off the vicious rat by himself. Since there was no one to cooperate with, Jin Ting would go out with the intention of killing the vicious rat by himself. But before he left the room, someone from another direction suddenly fainted from hunger. From this incident, Jin Ting came to the conclusion that the people in the room should go out and look for food in order not to starve to death. But Jin Ting's words were once again contradicted by a cowardly man who thought that starving to death was still better than being attacked by a vicious rat monster. Who would have thought that at that moment, an explosion would come from outside and the scared man would die from the iron rod stuck in his body? The situation became even darker when Jin Ting became the focus of the anger of several men who felt that if the explosion happened, it must be because Jin Ting was the culprit. Because he was the only one who had the idea to get everyone out of the room. Before Jin Ting could beat up the men in front of him, Qian Chao immediately diffused the situation by saying that the noise they were making might have attracted the attention of the vicious rat. Since this place was no longer safe, according to Qian Chao, they all had to leave. Not in vain. He himself had seen a rather large gate that would probably lead them out of this dangerous place. The reason why Qian Chao did not come out was because there were several obstacles that had to be overcome first. He also asked how confident Jin Ting was that he could defeat the vicious rat. Confidently, the MC replied 30%. Well, even though it's a low probability number, at least they still have hope. After that, everyone left for the exit gate. In the other direction, we are also shown with the annoying guy who took the probe in the form of the necklace of the dead scared guy.
就一起吧。
After walking down the corridor without making any noise to attract the rats, they had finally arrived at the exit gate that Qian Chao had intended. The annoying guy and another one immediately ran out and tried to open the gate with their physical strength. But it seemed like the gate couldn't be opened that way. And this is the obstacle Qian Chao meant, where they have to find the right code to open the gate. Suddenly, from another direction of the corridor, terrible sounds of vicious rats came out, making everyone take a cautious stance. Here, Jin Ting also tells a somewhat panicked Qian Chao to keep trying to find the right code so that they can all survive. With Jin Ting at the forefront, the terrified people slowly retreat to the back. And who would have thought that the vicious rat that was expected to appear from the direction of the corridor actually appeared from the roof of the ceiling void, plunging into their midst and causing panic, for the rat managed to kill one of them. While the others fled toward the still-closed exit gate, Jin Ting tried to stop the vicious rat from causing more casualties and acted as a distraction. Jin Ting's efforts were short-lived, however, as he was immediately knocked down by the vicious rat's immense strength. With that, the rat switched to targeting people who were in a state of panic, killing them one by one. After tearing some of them apart, it was the fat guy's turn. Fortunately, he was rescued by the returning Jin Ting before he became prey. From now on, Jin Ting would once again be the focus of the rat's attention. After playing chase for a while, Jin Ting had another idea. He told the fat man to use Jin Ting's sword, which had been knocked out of his hand, to cut the wires attached to the fallen pillar. Using the momentum of the pillar's fall, Jin Ting managed to make the vicious rat fall onto the pillar's ruins. And with that, the situation was deemed safe, as the threat had been dealt with. At the same time, Qian Chao also managed to open the exit gate, but it only opened a little and slowly began to close again, leaving the survivors trying to rush in. As a matter of fact, the terror was not over yet. The vicious rat that had been dealt with earlier was just one of the many vicious rats in the place. Since the gap in the gate was too big for their body size, they had no choice but to flee, scattering in all directions to avoid being torn apart by the hordes of monsters. And this is where most of them died, at the hands of the brutal rats. On the other side of the gate, when the man tried to open the gate with an iron rod, the body of a man who had been knocked down by a vicious rat accidentally pushed the iron rod. As a result, an even bigger gap opened up, and several people managed to get inside. Still with Jin Ting, who was being chased by several rats. In the midst of his escape, he saw the fat man who was instead crouching behind a large pillar, even though the gate was open, so Jin Ting is here at the same time, inviting the fat man along with himself out of this terrible place. After the two of them made it inside the gate, it was strange that the vicious rat suddenly backed away from them and stopped chasing them. When Jin Ting stood up to look around with the survivors, he found himself in an arena like the Roman Colosseum. and the stands were also filled with spectators cheering them on. Apparently, while Jin Ting and the others were trying to stay alive from the attack of the vicious rats, the audience was engrossed in watching their live broadcast. Soon after, armed troops appeared and pointed their guns at Jin Ting and the others. He was followed by a big man who walked proudly while carrying his weapon. The man named Zhang Wei seemed to have a higher level of power than the other armed forces. From the top of the arena, a woman named Lin Yan also appeared and told Zhang Wei that the boss only wanted 6 people today. This means that Zhang Wei has to eliminate 2 people out of 8 survivors. Here, Zhang Wei eliminated the man who left his girlfriend alone during the vicious rat attack. This man chose the most useless person among the survivors, and the other person Zhang Wei wanted to eliminate was the fat guy who was considered a burden. However, Jin Ting put up a body to prevent the fat man from being eliminated. He even didn't hesitate to put his sword to Zhang Wei's throat while threatening to slit the big man's throat if the gunmen didn't throw down their weapons. However, Jin Ting had to be silenced when the big man put on an act. While strangling Jin Ting, Zhang Wei did not expect a rotten caterpillar like Jin Ting to be so brave to him. After being humiliated, the MC, who felt no fear, immediately spat at the man. From another direction, we are also shown a figure called the boss. He stares at Zhang Wei as if to signal him to finish his work immediately, and in the end, the big man chooses Jin Ting as the last person to be eliminated. After beating Jin Ting to a pulp, Zhang Wei asked Fatso to be the one to execute Jin Ting with the dagger he gave him. Of course, as someone who had been saved by Jin Ting several times, Fatso didn't want to kill him at all. With a trembling body while holding the dagger, he felt very hesitant. However, he took small steps towards Jin Ting. When Fatso hesitated, Zhang Wei, realizing this, kicked Fatso, causing the dagger he was holding to plunge into Jin Ting's abdomen, killing him. After being declared dead, Jin Ting's body was disposed of by a lady with a hood, along with the bodies of other people who had also passed away. But when the lady saw Jin Ting's silver bracelet, it started to react. But suddenly,